welcome to the EFN Presents review of Season 4, Episode 7, Bats by Meriwether Williams. And with me, I have the QDR Crusaders. Guys, thanks for joining us this week.
Hi, I'm Flutterguy317, and I am one of two of the QDR Crusaders who is joining for this episode review.
And I'm RainbowPlasma. We are two guys from the QDR Crusaders out of four. We do a show every single week on EFN for the last, year and a half, I guess we've hit now. And we talk about art and stuff like that. But thanks for having us on.
Oh, thank you. And once again, it's great to have you with us. So this episode starts with Applejack getting ready for another apple bucking season, only to find out that their orchard is infested with vampire fruit bats that have been ruining the crop. Despite her concern for the animals, the main six manage to talk Fluttershy into using her stare so Twilight can cast a spell to stop the bats from eating all the apples. But the spell backfires and turns Fluttershy into a vampire fruit pony. Applejack has to decide what's really important to her, and she sacrifices her entry into the Appaloosan State Fair produce competition to get her friend back. Well, this episode starts off like the standard Applejack on the farm episode. It starts off with Applejack waiting for the sunrise on the first day of Applebuck season, and she's dancing in a shower of apples, and pretty soon everything gets turned on its head. Fluttershy turns into a vampire bat, and the episode's got a bit of a darker tone to it. What did you guys think of this episode going in, and how did the episode line up to your expectations?
Well, both RainbowPlasma and myself tend to avoid spoilers, so we had no idea what to expect going into it. But just, like you were saying, starting off, it was just a standard Applejack episode. You have the bats and her protecting her apple fields and stuff like that. And it was kind of surprising when Fluttershy transformed. I mean, you could kind of see it coming because of, all the buildup and stuff like that. But still, it was like not what I was expecting at all from the episode.
Well, you were telling me, Flutterguy, when we were talking about the episode a little bit, it seemed like it was a Halloween episode, which was an interesting thought because I guess, MLP has never really aired around Halloween. I'm not too well versed. Obviously, the Luna episode was a definite Halloween episode, but they might also be trying to do a kind of scarier Halloween themed thing. And I could definitely see this airing, next year over Halloween if they wanted to on the hub.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I was talking to you and I mentioned how it has like a Tim Burton kind of feel to it, like a real Nightmare Before Christmas, especially like in the song and in there's one scene in the episode where it's like the moon and there's these clouds and the clouds are all like twisty and turny, kind of like a Nightmare Before Christmas feel to it. So
I think a Tim Burton feel is definitely the way to describe it. And in the song, that's really the first hint we see of that tone in this episode, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
The song was great. I really did enjoy that and the entire feel of the thing. One of the amazing things about Daniel Ingram and all of his songs that he's putting into the show is that every single song you really don't know what to expect in terms of tone or feel or style or anything like that. We've seen so many wide varieties of things, from musicals to duets to choruses to all of these amazing different things. And this was just, another thing to add to the repertoire.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that's what got to me with this episode. I was expecting the standard Applejack Farm episode, so I was expecting the standard Applejack Farm country song. But that aside, this song really flows differently than a lot of the other songs in the series. And it's not that it's not melodic, but it has a very different meter to it and how it rhymes, and the general feel of the song seems new for the series.
Well, I'm quite into music because I was brought up on singing and piano and stuff like that. And the interesting thing was that there was really a lot of the music in this episode was very minor key kind of, you get that kind of creepy vibe, and you could see the difference between Fluttershy's singing, which was more of a lighthearted thing, and then you've got this odd sounding weird beats and, like I said, minor keys in Applejack's part that really contributed to a different feeling song.
I like that contrast is reflected in the visuals of the song. When Applejack's singing, it's more menacing, darker tones, more muted colors. And when Fluttershy is singing, everything is bright and happy and has a bit of a bloom, a glow to it. And that reflects their views as well, where Applejack sees the bats as evil monsters, and Fluttershy sees them as these innocent, cute, furry little creatures.
Yeah, for sure. There was a great visual contrast there, and we just talked about this on our spoiler cast for our show, but basically there was a kind of a two-sided argument in this episode, and it wasn't, one side was good and one side was bad and all that. There was definitely two sides to this argument, and that kind of showed in the song too, because while Applejack's was kind of darker and gloomier and grayer and more purple and more like night, Fluttershy's wasn't perfect either, because it had this kind of, like you were saying, bloom to it. It's got like almost like someone rubbed Vaseline on the lens, and what that gives is an impression of things being too good, almost like a fantasy world. Like there's some sort of fantasy world that Fluttershy has come up with, and it fits perfectly, because when you look at things like the bats, those are not what the bats look like. Those are what the bats look like to Fluttershy, and so she's trying to present her side of the argument, but it's not, all sunshine and rainbows. She's kind of stretching the truth a little bit. So there is pros and cons to both sides of the arguments, and by providing these visuals, it helps make it so it's not so one-sided, and I think they did a great job of that.
Yeah, in this episode, if there really is a conflict between the characters, it's between the viewpoints of Fluttershy and Applejack. And like you said, you're not really seeing the situation as it is. You're seeing the situation through the lens of whoever's singing. And I think that was a really effective way of reinforcing the opposing views of the characters there.
Yeah, definitely. I do like the visual style that they used in the song. It's kind of nice to see that contrast, and basically anytime that like Fluttershy starts singing, they do have this bright bloom effect. And there's this one scene where you see both Fluttershy and Applejack on the screen at the same time, and it's kind of split in the middle. And on Fluttershy's side, it's very bright, and on Applejack's side, it's very dark. It definitely sets the tone, or the dual tones for the song, which is really nice.
Yeah, I love when they give a song control of the episode like that. We usually see that more in the CMC songs. In Babs Seed, they're in the theater, and a giant Babs comes out of the screen. Obviously, that didn't happen. It's just part of the song. It's almost kind of music video-esque, where you have these crazy things happening. With the main six, it's more like May the Best Pet Win. Everything in that song really is happening. They're just singing where they currently are. The song doesn't take place outside the narrative in a way. And there was a great moment in this song where Fluttershy's talking about, they spit out the seeds, or they send the seeds around, and the trees grow. And as she's saying that, this tree sprouts and all these apples bloom, and Applejack kind of knocks it down with her hoof in the background like a prop. And obviously that's not happening. It was just interesting to see a main six song that works like that.
Yeah, there was that aspect of the music video about it for sure, that how they added those extra bits in, huh?
Yeah, it's interesting, because I think most of the songs in MLP so far have been like very, like you were saying, melodic, very like pop culture, like recognizable, something that you can listen to day to day. And I think this song is kind of the exception to that, where it very much pertains to this episode. I mean, I'm sure people will remix it, and people will listen to it on and off and whatnot, but there's songs like Becoming Popular or Winter Wrap Up or stuff like that you can listen to like just kind of randomly
anytime. Yeah.
Something I did want to bring up was the fact that you were talking about how it was kind of music video-esque, and how it wasn't perfectly in the world. And I think something that kind of showed there was the fact that when they were in that song, the rest of the main six who weren't in this argument were kind of extremes. They joined in with this, get rid of the bats, and they all kind of ganged up on Fluttershy. And then, but people could look at that and be like, oh, why are they being so extreme? But it was part of the song, because the second that they come out of the song, immediately you see Rarity come over, and it's like her normal argument, being like, well, she did present a good argument. They're not really perfectly like that. They're not exactly like, oh yes, we should get rid of the bats and we're all on your side. It was more of like an exaggerated part of the song, which I think was a really nice touch.
Oh, well, it is kind of exaggerated, but it does fit the song, and the song is a nice progression that leads from Applejack just expressing her situation to the core conflict of the episode, which is the main six versus Fluttershy. The main six forcing Fluttershy to do something she doesn't want to do, to use the stare against the bats. And it's kind of interesting because this seems like the situation that we had in Keep Calm and Flutter On when they were forming Discord, and a Fluttershy kind of sticks to her guns there. She doesn't give in, and so it's interesting for them to almost regress the character in that respect. What did you guys think of this, of the core conflict of the story?
Well, I mean, in this kind of situation, it's both good points, good arguments. You know, there's Applejack's side where if they lose the apple farm, then obviously the ponies won't have the apples. But Fluttershy's side where if the bats don't have the apples, then they don't survive. So it's kind of a more realistic approach, I guess, in this episode. So it is almost a rehash of the Discord episode, but I don't know. To me, it seems more real in this episode or in this setting, just because it is a tough choice for her to make. Whereas with the Discord one, it's like I think that was a little bit more obvious for her to choose.
I also think that let's think of it from a being a role model point of view, because part of the show, it's not all of it, but part of the show is showing, target audiences and people around the world that, you can be these character types and it's okay, and you can be whoever you want to be. And so I think a lot of people who would relate to Fluttershy and being shy, I'm not a very shy person, so I don't relate very much with Fluttershy, but this kind of works for all characters. Realistic characters don't learn from one experience, and I know I've had a lot of people talk about the fact that they rehash some stuff, and while that is true, I also believe that character development is something that's slow and over time, and it takes something huge and crazy to get you to shift your personality that quickly. So I like to see the fact that they have to kind of go through 3 or 4 iterations of getting Fluttershy to be a little bit more confident, because it's not like she completely forgot, it's just it takes time for characters to change.
Yeah, I mean, you can see some progression in Fluttershy throughout like the entire show, I guess. There are some episodes where it almost seems that like certain characters kind of regress in their development. But I mean, in terms of like rehashing this kind of situation, I think it works because she didn't really necessarily regress to where she's not assertive or anything like that, because these are her close friends, and her saying no to them when the decision is so close. It seems like it is kind of a rehash, but it, like RainbowPlasma was saying, it does take a couple of times to kind of get the point across.
Oh, that's very true. I mean, being timid is sort of Fluttershy's defining characteristic, and you can't just take one episode and suddenly cast that aside. And I guess the stakes are different in this episode as well, because Applejack needs Fluttershy's help, and as a friend, it's hard to say no to that. Whereas in the Discord episode, it was simply, well, we're putting Discord back in jail, as it were, but her friends really weren't relying on her to save them, I guess.
Well, yeah, and let's take a look at this from another side. Let's look at all the positive changes that have happened since season 1 with Fluttershy. First of all, she was completely open with her objection. She didn't stay silent, and she didn't think those things to herself. She told her friends, I don't think this is right. Obviously she didn't stand very firm on those points, but she did A, bring those points up, and B, she did kind of fight with her friends about it. Think back to the library. She was, she raised her voice as much as Fluttershy can. She did raise her voice at her friends, and at the end of the day, she didn't end up standing her ground on it, but she did at the beginning, and she definitely has kind of come along that distance at least.
Yeah, if we were to look back to Fluttershy in the first couple episodes, I think we could definitely say that there has been some change in her character, but it's more nuanced and more realistic. It's reflecting the situation she's in, not just some overwhelming change in her character. But this isn't just a Fluttershy episode, is it? Like a lot of the season 4 episodes we've seen so far, this really features the main six as a group. Nobody here is along for the ride. So how do you think the other characters were portrayed in this episode?
Well, this is a big thing for me, and I know that's the reason why Flutterguy didn't start talking, because he knew that I would babble on about this. But
Yeah.
I have a little thing that I've talked about a lot in our own spoiler casts and to my close friends, where I mentioned last season and when I was talking about previous seasons, in previous seasons, when there's a storyline, they don't bring along the main six. They brought along one character from the main six and they had them do a story, and maybe there would be another one as a minor character or to help them, like maybe like a Rarity and a Fluttershy, or like, like a Fall Weather Friends kind of thing. But for the most part, it wasn't the main six. It was a portion of it doing their own little stories. And that was kind of necessary at the beginning to introduce you to the characters and their own individual friendships, and I think that's great. But there was also kind of a lack of this big group sense of all of them kind of being together and having adventures together. And I love when they're all together. For some reason, just seeing the six of them go off on an activity is great. And every single thing so far this season, every single thing has had all of them come together and do things together, which is something that is not been done consistently so far, and I think they're starting to do this season, and I really enjoy it because I like when they're all together. It makes writing a lot easier. Do you need someone to say something shy? Here's Fluttershy. Do you need someone to step on something accidentally and get scared? Here's Rarity. Like, you've got all these different things. Obviously that's a very one-dimensional look at characters, but I really do enjoy the fact that they're bringing everyone along for the ride with all these episodes.
Yeah, I think in that kind of situation, or in the season 4 situation where it's all like the entire main 6 cast in each of these episodes, I think it's kind of tougher to kind of set it up in the beginning to like ensure that they're all there. But once you have the basic premise, you have all the characters there to use at your disposal. So I guess it kind of does make writing the episode a little bit easier for adding in those little quips and stuff like that.
Well, I agree. I mean, I love seeing the main 6 on an adventure together. And in the past, we did see more of those 1 or 2 character episodes. But if you were to boil this down to, 1 or 2 characters, it really is an Applejack and Fluttershy episode. And that's a dynamic I don't think we've seen before. So if this were to be an episode that really just focused on 1 or 2 characters, I think there was a lot with that dynamic it could have explored and a lot of fresh material it could play around with.
Flutterguy loved this episode. It's his 2 favorite ponies.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, no, I mean, in this episode, you're right that the main focus is obviously on Applejack and Fluttershy, and the other ponies and Spike are in the background. So you do get this interesting dynamic. And I guess we kind of saw it in the Parasprite episode just a little bit, Fluttershy and Applejack, because obviously Applejack is, protecting crops and food and stuff like that, and Fluttershy is always with the animals. But it's interesting to see the whole dynamic of them, and it's not like a very aggressive fighting kind of thing, but it's more of like a friendly argument, and it obviously has consequences.
Well, they're coming at it from different angles. Applejack is more pragmatic. She's looking out for the farm and her family, and Fluttershy is concerned for the well-being of the animals. But in the Parasprite episode, I don't recall Fluttershy actually transforming into a Parasprite. So
yeah, that's
what did you guys think of Flutterbat, as it were?
I still say Battershy would have been funnier, but
I actually really enjoyed the design for Flutterbat, Battershy, Vampire Shy, however you want to call her. Because we have seen bat ponies before with Luna, like her guards and stuff like that. But this was kind of taking it a step further and like truly transforming Fluttershy into a bat. And it's like they took a really detailed approach to it. Like her cutie mark changed into 3 bats, which is really not something that you'd notice at first. But then, you go back and look at it again and it's like, oh, that's something that they threw in there. That's really cool.
That's a great attention to detail.
Yeah, there's stuff like that. Obviously you got her ears and her wings and her general design. They obviously took some time to really put some, love into this, as opposed to it just being a little modification of Fluttershy. They obviously made this into a character of its own with little quirks and things like that. And it was great detail that we love to see as people who are focused more on the art of the show and things like that.
Well, I like that they took their time with the transition as well. It starts off really subtly with Fluttershy during the spell, where the camera kind of holds on her for a bit and she has her full attention, and that's one thing that they kind of mention is required for the spell. So even then you can think maybe something's going to happen, and afterwards she has that lingering glance at the apple, and it builds. It's this gradual progression, and it's a great pacing for the episode, where sometimes because of time constraints they have to rush through things, and it works so well because it gives you clues along the way, And it builds really nicely to a great payoff with this fantastic character design. All around, I think that it was handled beautifully in this episode.
Yeah, people bug us all the time about the fact that we're so spoiler anal, because I'm very, very no spoilers at all. Like, I throw my headset off whenever the hub does this next week stuff on the stream.
Yeah.
Like everything, like I'm super, super careful about it. I don't want to know a single thing. I don't want to know who wrote it. I don't want to know the episode title. I don't want to know anything. And while that might be a little bit extreme, this is a perfect example of I don't want to know anything about bats. I don't want to know it's vampire bats. Heaven forbid I find out that Fluttershy was a bat here, because it would ruin the entire transition. And there was a fantastic transition where you really didn't know what was happening, but there was weird looks that you were getting, and you're like, oh, well, that's a bit strange. And you still didn't know what it would be at the end of the day. So, I love the fact that we could walk into that and we could get to experience that journey and that and the story as they meant to present it to us, which is without any warning.
Yeah, I agree. I really enjoy like their attention to detail with the whole transition. Like you were saying, Ramble, it's really well paced, and the whole point where like they're in the woods and they're searching for this culprit who's eating the apples, and you see Fluttershy like looking at multiple apples and being like, oh, it's so juicy. And it's like, even as she's saying that, you can kind of see they're tinting her eyes a little bit more red, and like she's got the drool, and then obviously the fangs come out, the wings come out and stuff like that. It's really well paced, really well timed. I also really enjoyed the whole time that they were in the woods, like trying to find out who the culprit is. And I know, RainbowPlasma, you were telling me earlier that you have a point that you really enjoy, which is when Rainbow Dash tackles the scarecrow.
Oh yeah, that was really cute, because Rainbow Dash was being a bit brash, and she was going, I'm going to take you on, and she looks at the scarecrow, and after she figures out it's the scarecrow, she does this really cute, like, oh, expression. I don't really know it. She makes a noise that's super cute to me, but again, I might be biased, so,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, bringing up those nighttime scenes, I mean, Sweet Apple Acres and the orchard, the visuals in this episode were definitely up to the new standard that season 4 has been setting. You have some of those great scenes with the new character lighting where you have the moon at their back, and some of the scenes when they're walking around, there's just so many layers, foreground and background with the characters. You have this great parallax as they're moving around, and it seems to hold true that every time we see a location in the show, in the new episode, it's the best looking we've ever seen it. And I gotta say, even though we should count the vampire-infested fruit bat trees as almost a new location, this is the best looking I think Sweet Apple Acres has ever been.
Yep, for sure. For sure. The show has definitely stepped up its game. Every single year, it becomes a little bit harder to notice, I think, every single year, because obviously as you go up, the changes are less and less noticeable. But, they have really stepped up their game. If you look back at older episodes, there's definite changes there, and just the fluidity and the attention to detail, that they are definitely stepping up their game in perhaps less noticeable ways, but they're doing all the same this season.
I do enjoy how much they've paid attention to the lighting in this season, and it's been progressively getting like more involved throughout the show. But this season especially, like they've really stepped it up, like you were saying, Ramble, with the backlighting and also the shadows and the foreground lighting and stuff like that. It's really stepped it up. And this episode in particular, you had like fog on the field or in the orchard when they were kind of going through it, and it really gives it this mysterious look to it. It really sets the tone for the scene. And I'm not sure that if like this episode had been done in season 1, for instance, that they would have had the same effect.
Talking about less noticeable details, in the daytime scenes in particular, I noticed partway through the episode all the ambient noise that they have. There's like insects and crickets and all these sounds that make it not just a backdrop for the characters, but an actual location that they're inhabiting. And I think that's something that can really easily be overlooked is the Foley work that goes in, whether it's the characters walking or other ambient sounds that really do add a lot to the scenes. And I'd have to go back to confirm, but this is probably something that's developed along with the visuals as the seasons have progressed.
Yeah, ambiance and it works both for visuals and audio, but for those more subtle things, the less you notice them, the better, because that means they're kind of working. Obviously, you've got the big stuff. For video, you've got like the big blurs and the big set pieces. And for audio, you have like the songs where you are supposed to notice the audio. But, for those things, for sure, the less you notice them, the fact that they are subtle and that they're definitely there and you notice them, but not enough that you'd really think about them, I think that speaks a lot to how well they're done.
Yeah, it's like almost like a subconscious feeling or addition to the scene when you have these background noises, and they do kind of add something to the scene, obviously. But like if you look at some fan animations, not to degrade fan animations because they're awesome, but if you look at some fan animations that don't have like the same background noises and stuff like that, it's kind of out of place a little bit. But things kind of come together when you have that combination, and they've been doing that a lot more. At least with like the whole Foley sounds and stuff like that, like crickets and hooves and stuff like that. I mean, the background music has been consistent basically throughout the entire show, but I guess they've been adding all these background sounds in, which is nice.
And you're right, it's one of those things that if you do it right, people won't notice that it's there, but you notice when it's gone. Like you said in fan animations, it's the absence of it seems out of place, but when it's done right, it just blends in so well. It adds to the scene, but it doesn't immediately stand out, which I guess means it's doing its job. So we've covered a number of things from the episode. Are there any scenes or little moments that you just wanted to call out that you really enjoyed?
I don't know. We talked about the cute little Rainbow Dash thing that she did.
Yeah.
So I mean, I always got to talk about Rainbow Dash in every single episode that I talk about. So no, I don't really have anything else fun that was there. I think all the characters did a really good job this episode. I liked Rarity in this episode. She was a lot of fun and she had good speaking roles there. So I thought she did really well.
She had her biohazard suit.
Yeah, I know, that was fantastic.
that was great.
In that scene, you have that POV shot as well when the bat is licking the apple off of her visor. And other than like a character waking up, have we really had a POV shot in the show? It's something that kind of catches you off guard.
That's a good point.
Yeah, I don't think so. That was definitely a good shot. I thoroughly enjoyed Pinkie Pie in this episode.
Oh, with her prehensile hair?
Yes. Her handling the flashlight or torch, if you're in the UK or wherever, with her hair was just fantastic. And I love the little quip between her and Fluttershy at the end of the episode when Fluttershy gets transformed back and was asking, like, I was a vampire pony? And Pinkie Pie was like, yes. And it just went back and forth, and it was a lot of fun.
And completely in character for Pinkie Pie as well.
And Fluttershy, too, on that end of the argument.
Yes. And speaking of her hair, that was the drill when she was tunneling underground too, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yep.
It's very versatile.
Yeah, I mean, I think they did a pretty good job of portraying all of the characters like in character in this episode. And yeah, some characters, like for instance Pinkie Pie, I guess has this reputation for being used as kind of a gag character when they need to throw in something like that. But in this episode in particular, like it was toned down. It was like all in the moment. Everything that she did kind of made sense with the situation, and she was still like her happy, fun self. So it worked.
Yeah, it wasn't out of place. It was just how Pinkie would naturally react to the situations that she was in.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so from that respect, you can't really call them antics because they're not her causing something, they're her responding to something.
Yeah.
Well, I would argue that all characters were in character, but I won't get into that.
Well, it's about time for final thoughts and scores. RainbowPlasma, what's your summary for this episode? And give it a score from 1 to 5.
Well, as a lot of people know that I really don't dislike any episodes of Pony. I love them all the same, and I give them all ratings from 8 to 10, which kind of defeats purposes of this scoring system, I suppose. But I have a hard time scoring it. So all I'll say is I really did enjoy this episode, and I thought it was a lot of fun, and I don't see a lot of qualms with it. So it was quite high up there for me.
Yeah, I'm gonna say also that like this was just a really fun episode, and I have a feeling that a lot of the episodes in season 4 so far have been just that, really fun episodes. Not really anything to kind of progress the storyline or to progress character development that much, but it's just it's a fun, funny episode. So I'm gonna give this a 5 because I really enjoyed it.
Out of 5, let's clarify.
Yes, 5 out of 5.
Because I just said 8 or 9.
Yeah, no, Ramble said out of 5, so.
Well, I suck.
No. Oh, hey, 8 out of 5 is a fantastic score.
I'm
Yeah,
gonna
there
go
you
with
go.
that. I'm gonna go with that. I'm gonna go with either an 8 or a 9 out of 5.
Well, I agree on a lot of the same points there. While we have seen a lot of episodes in season 4 that are trying to continue this season-long plot arc, it's nice to have an episode that's just completely self-contained, nothing crazy. It's just a down-to-earth problem that the characters are facing that the main 6 are thrown into as a group and work their way through. We see how each of the characters reacts, and we leverage everything that's been put into these characters in the last 3 seasons. I love that it caught me off guard. It wasn't what I was expecting, and I know that some people have said there's nothing more they can do with Applejack's character, but we see here that the dilemma can focus on one character, but by involving all of the main 6, it opens up a lot more possibilities for how the story plays out and the roles that the characters take, since they're not the sole character driving the story forward. Like a lot of episodes in season 4, there's a nice number of callbacks to previous episodes, like when Pinky is singing Fruitbat Ramble.
Yes,
Oh yeah,
that was
that's
fantastic.
that'll be my point. I like that.
And yeah, another great song. Maybe not one, like you'd said, that you can just sing anytime, but a fantastic song nonetheless. I'd have to say this probably ties Hearthwarming Eve for my favorite Meriwether-Williams episode. And it was entertaining, and it had some surprises in there for me, and I don't think there's any more that I could ask for. I'd have to give this a 4.5 out of 5.
4th season is best season.
Fourth season is best season.
4th season, best pony.
Well, that about wraps it up for this week. Once again, I'm Ramble, and joining me today, I had the QDR Crusaders. Guys, thanks again for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us. If anyone wants to check us out, we are on EFN along with, where you are right now. Every Tuesday we premiere our show at 8 p.m. Eastern. That's 1 a.m. UTC. So if you like to hear more rambling and analyzation, but this time about art, then go check us out.
And join us next week for a review of Season 4, Episode 8. Headphone time, guys. Rarity Takes Manhattan. This has been EFN Presents. Thanks for watching.